Deep in a cave system in northern Spain, at the bottom of a 13-meter vertical shaft, researchers found a skull with two holes punched through the forehead. It was 430,000 years old. And when forensic scientists finally analyzed it using modern crime scene techniques, they concluded something almost impossible to process. This might be the oldest murder case ever solved. The site is called Cima de los Huesos, the Pit of Bones, located in the Atapuerca Mountains of northern Spain. It's one of the richest fossil sites on Earth for studying early humans, and it's been excavated almost continuously since the late 20th century. Over decades of careful digging, researchers have pulled nearly 7,000 bone fragments from the site, representing at least 28 individuals, all belonging to an extinct human relative from the Middle Pleistocene, a population that lived long before modern Homo sapiens existed, and long before Neanderthals, as we typically picture them, had fully emerged either. The only way into the pit is straight down that 13-meter shaft, a narrow, near vertical drop, with no natural pathway leading to it, no gentle slope, nothing an animal or person could stumble into casually. For decades, one central mystery loomed over the entire site. How did dozens of bodies end up down there in the first place, in a location almost nobody could reach by accident? Then researchers reconstructed one particular skull, cataloged as Cranium 17, painstakingly assembled from 52 separate bone fragments recovered over roughly 20 years of excavation. Piecing together fragile, half-a-million-year-old bone fragments is slow, careful work. Researchers have compared it to solving a three-dimensional puzzle where most of the pieces have started to crumble, and where a single wrong placement could throw off the entire reconstruction. But once the skull came together, what they found stopped them cold. Two nearly identical circular fractures side by side just above the left eye socket. At first, the obvious explanation seemed simple enough. Maybe the body hit a rock during the long fall down the shaft. That would be the easiest, least dramatic answer, and researchers took it seriously, since accidental falls were already considered the leading explanation for how the other bodies at the site had arrived there. But they pointed out a critical problem with that theory. A single fall could plausibly cause one impact. It's extraordinarily unlikely to cause two separate, cleanly defined fractures from the same object, striking at two distinctly different angles. As the original research team put it, that scenario would require the same object striking the skull twice during a single fall. A scenario they considered essentially implausible, bordering on statistically absurd. So they turned to modern forensic methods, the same techniques used in criminal investigations today: 3D scanning, contour analysis, and detailed trajectory mapping of both wounds, treating a half-million-year-old skull with the same rigor a modern medical examiner would apply to a fresh case. What they found was that both fractures were nearly identical in size and shape, right down to a small distinctive notch present in both wound outlines, strongly suggesting the same object caused both injuries, delivered in two separate strikes, likely only moments apart. And here's the detail that turns this from an unfortunate accident into something much darker. Researchers concluded that either wound alone was likely fatal, penetrating deep enough to reach the brain, which means whoever caused this didn't stop after the first blow. They struck again, even though the first strike was probably already enough to kill. Researchers pointed to this repetition as the strongest evidence of intent. Accidental injuries don't typically repeat themselves in nearly the same location, with the same object from a different angle. Falls happen once. This happened twice. There's another chilling detail buried in the geometry of the wounds. Because both fractures landed on the left side of the victim's face, researchers suggested the attacker was very likely right-handed. A natural angle for a right-handed strike delivered from in front of or slightly beside the victim. Remarkably, separate studies of other remains at this same site suggest that most individuals found there were right-handed too, hinting at a small, strange window into the physical tendencies of an entire ancient population, hundreds of thousands of years removed from anyone alive today. It's a small enough detail that it's easy to miss, but it means researchers weren't just studying an act of violence. They were reading handedness off a skull older than most geological eras most people have ever heard of. As for the murder weapon, Researchers admit they can't say for certain. No weapon was found alongside the skull, and after this much time, none likely ever will be. Leading theories include a wooden spear, a stone-tipped spear, or a simple stone hand axe, any of which could produce this kind of blunt, penetrating trauma without shattering the surrounding bone further. Whatever it was, it left behind no trace of itself, only the shape of its absence, written twice into the same patch of bone. What's clear is that this wasn't a struggle that spiraled out of control by accident. It has the hallmarks of a targeted, repeated attack carried out with a specific object and very likely a specific intention. Which raises an even bigger question. How did this body, along with 27 others, end up at the bottom of that shaft in the first place? Researchers ruled out the idea that these were simply unlucky people who wandered too close to the edge one by one over generations. The sheer number of individuals recovered makes accidental mass falls essentially statistically implausible, especially given how difficult the shaft is to reach at all, tucked deep inside a cave system that itself requires deliberate effort to navigate even today with modern equipment. Instead, researchers now believe the bodies were deliberately placed there, likely lowered down by other members of their community, meaning Cima de los Huesos isn't just the site of the oldest known murder. It may also represent the earliest known evidence of funerary behavior in the human fossil record. An ancient community that intentionally gathered and disposed of their dead in the same specific location again and again, for reasons we can only guess at. Whether that behavior was driven by grief, ritual, superstition, or something else entirely is something researchers acknowledge they may never be able to answer with certainty, since intention doesn't fossilize the way bone does. Put those two findings together, and the pit tells an extraordinary story. Sometime around 430,000 years ago, one early human killed another, deliberately and with intent. And that same community, whether out of grief, ritual, or fear, chose this dark, hidden shaft as the place to lay their dead to rest. Violence and ritual, sitting side by side in the same handful of bones, hundreds of thousands of years before anyone could write the story down, and long before anything resembling written law, courts, or justice existed to make sense of what had happened. It's a strange thing to realize. That murder, and our instinct to mark death with meaning, might be exactly as old as each other. Two of the most distinctly human behaviors on record, discovered side by side, in the same dark pit, in the same shattered skull, waiting nearly 500,000 years for anyone to notice. If this kind of history fascinates you, let me know what mystery you want covered next. And if this surprised you, hit like and subscribe, because next time we're covering another case where ancient bones reveal a story nobody expected. See you in the next one.